Next, our faculty will discuss additional techniques to modify core beliefs, ones that involve reflecting about other people. I'd like to discuss techniques you use to modify core beliefs and other cognitions as well. So let's cover role models, desirable beliefs for others, and viewing others as a comparison point.
Yeah, I use that particularly with clients who are angry. Thinking of a role model, ask one individual, can you think of somebody who handles anger in a way that you respect and admire? He might have grown up in a neighborhood where that seemed to be pretty rare, but he's able to find somebody, the pastor of his church. So I'd say, well, in that very same situation, when somebody looks at you that way, what would Reverend Johnson do? How would Reverend Johnson see that? How would his perspective be? And this is a person you respect as being a man of peace and was not quick on the trigger that way. And would he see that as being indication of him being helpless? Would he see that as indication of him being a victim? Would he see that indication of him being powerless? He said no. He would just look at that other person, that criticizer, and say, that person's opinion doesn't define who I am. That person's opinion says nothing about me. I remember there was an interview, I think with Barack Obama. I think one interviewer asked him, well, how do you feel about the fact that so many people hate you? And he said, well, that doesn't bother me at all because they really don't know me. People who really, really, really know me like me, and those people dislike me not for who I am, but what I symbolize. And I think telling that story actually was important for that client because he was able to see another side of it.
So whether you voted for Barack Obama or you didn't, what a good role model he is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I find that having a client shift perspective in the way of asking them to think about what they'd want a loved one to believe. So I'm working with a terrific client with avoidant personality disorder who has this unlovability core belief, and it's actually verbalized that she fears she's going to just die alone, that she'll never find anyone to love her. She just feels so deeply unlovable. And yet she has a 5-year-old niece that she is so close to, loves dearly. And when I asked her to think about, would you want your little niece to have some of these same beliefs, to feel unlovable and alone, she was so able to see it more clearly. That really helped her. I say, of course not. Of course I wouldn't want her to think this about herself.
And what would she want her niece, her 5-year-old niece, if her 5-year-old niece were exactly the client's age and the client's circumstances, what would she want that 5-year-old to believe?
She'd want that grown-up 5-year-old to believe that she was at the very least good enough to be loved, at the very least.
And in addition to what they would want someone else to believe, you can also use the strategy of what you would believe about someone else in the same situation. So I had an OCPD client who believed she was not good enough because she's a high school student and she applied to 5 colleges and got into 4. So she has a little sister, and I said, when your little sister's applying to college, if she applies to 5 prestigious universities and gets into 4, would you think that she's not good enough? And she said, well, no, I'd probably think that she was pretty impressive.
And then what did you ask her next to apply it to herself?
And I said, well, what do you think that means about you then? She said, well, if I can get that distance from it, it makes me think that it is pretty impressive. And she said, but I just it still kind of feels a little bit like I'm not good enough, even though I can understand that.
And the commonality in all of these techniques is, as you just said, is to help the client pull back from her own core belief and look at more objectively how another person would view himself in a difficult situation, what the client would want a loved one to believe, and what the client believes about someone else or would believe about someone else in that situation. What do you want to remember from this clinical roundtable? We talked about role models, desirable beliefs for other people, comparison points. And here's another reflection question. Which of these techniques have you used before? And what was the experience like? Or which techniques do you plan to try? Next, do a role play or write a transcript in which you use one or more of the techniques the clinicians described.